I'll call the meeting to order.
Great.
So special meeting of Human Rights Commission is officially called to order. And first action will be I will turn chair duties over to Kelsey Paulschatz for the remainder of tonight's meeting.
All right. Thanks, Doug. Okay, so you've already called the meeting to order, so we'll just move ahead with roll call. Give me a second. I'm slightly unprepared.
Mark, you want to just say that you're Mark Priest present?
Mark Priest, present.
Perfect, thanks.
Vienna Kadura, present.
Great. Kelsey Paulschatz, present. Emily, let's go to you next.
Present.
And Doug?
Doug Kolash, present.
Thanks. Excellent. Okay, do we have anyone who would volunteer to read the Native American land acknowledgement? Just the land acknowledgement portion of that.
I'll do it again since I did it poorly last time. If I get to it. I have it. We meet today in the community of Iowa City, which now occupies the homelands of Native American nations to whom we owe our commitment and dedication. The area of Iowa City was within the homelands of the Iowa, Meskwaki, and Sauk. And because history is complex, time goes far back beyond memory, we also acknowledge the ancient connections of many other indigenous peoples here. The history of broken treaties, forced removal that disposed indigenous people of their homelands was and is an act of colonization and genocide that we cannot erase. We implore the Iowa City community to commit to understanding and addressing these injustices as we work toward equity, restoration, and reparations.
Thank you, Mark. Do we have any public comment today on items not on the agenda? Nope. Okay. Item number 4 is an announcement that Ames is going to host a conference for commissioners on Saturday, June 7th of this year from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And I believe information was sent to our emails with RSVP.
It was. I just put it on there kind of more just to bring attention that the RSVP date is tomorrow.
Excellent. Thank you for the reminder, Stephanie. Does anyone already plan to attend? Okay. Okay. Well, maybe we can review and maybe one of us will be able to. I'm plan to check my calendar to see. Item number 5, Youth Award updates and details.
That was just on here because at your last regular meeting, I forgot to put the Youth Awards on, and I was like, it's May 21st. So reminder, if everyone could be there before 6, it would be very much appreciated. 37 recipients. Kelsey is doing the opening, then Mayor Teague will give brief remarks, then Doug will do the announcements of the honorees with Roger and Liz handing out the awards, and then Mark will close us out. And of course, we'll take a group picture, so hopefully all the commissioners can be in attendance so we can get a good group picture. And then just a lot of opportunities to take pictures with honorees and with commissioners. So, the one thing, if you have not, I think everybody in the room has RSVP to me, but Doug and Emily, if you could let me, I know Emily, originally you said you couldn't come, but I didn't know if anything had changed. And if you do plan on coming, just need to know how many guests you're bringing in. Same with Doug, would be much appreciated.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Stephanie. Item number 5, this is the bulk of our meeting time today, is our review of the human rights grants and recommendations for fiscal year 2025. Many thanks to Stephanie for facilitating our digital process and keeping us to task too, and thanks to everybody who provided your individual scorings. The spreadsheet that Stephanie sent to us was complete, but I'm going to share screen of a slightly different organization of the spreadsheet that actually accounts for, sorry, I can't talk and do this at the same time. It accounts for our averages, as well as a rank of the total averages.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And before they get into discussion, was there anybody from the public who wants to comment on this agenda item? No? Okay.
Thanks, Stephanie.
I did want to comment on the process because I only had today to review what the rest of you had said or written, and it would have been helpful for me if you could have gotten it done sooner. I'm sort of being a grumpy old man, but I did dedicate the day then to read what you had said and the scores you'd given, and I'd appreciate this ranking this way. That's very helpful, Kelsey.
Great. I appreciate everyone who got their scores in by the deadline too. I think that in the past, what we've done is we have started at the top. So we have started with our highest average ranking group, and we've opened up discussion. Can I just get a verbal agreement if everyone is in favor of continuing in that manner again today?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that works.
And the physical applications are in your packets.
Excellent.
So you don't have to go off of memory.
Okay. Doug, Emily?
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Emily.
Yep.
Okay, great. So that would mean that we're starting with our kids doing business as Open Heartland. And let's see. Don't know which part of our packet that's in.
83.
83, thank you.
I'm going to have to go to the book. I'd printed off the previous stuff.
And if you don't need to look at the whole application, there should be something like this in front of you that would have all 13 submissions along with notes that the folks who decided
on page
to take
83.
notes made.
Yeah.
There's no page numbers in here?
Yeah,
Is
but
here
there's,
to see?
The page numbers probably don't match up because this is a separate booklet that was just put into your packet.
Yep.
But I would think the pages should still correlate because there's page numbers. Yeah, so the page numbers should still be,
Okay.
no, they're not. They got, well, 1, 2, no, the page numbers are right. Bike library starts on page 3, but what's confusing you is the application page numbers. That say 1 out of 6 or 1 out of 7.
Great. All right.
I'm kind of lost. I don't know where to look.
Well, I know that we have all thoroughly reviewed these. It's just a matter of them then finding them in these physical copies in front of us. Emily and Doug, I assume you've got Control F to the right applications right in front of you. But let's see if we can quickly catch
I'm
up.
looking at mine, but I printed my own off.
Because here says the number.
Great.
83. So I'm trying to find. Oops, sorry. I'm so sorry.
And then they're all 1 of 7.
Here, Viana, if you want, I've got this too that maybe we could both look off of.
I printed them off
Well, I have my
myself,
own
so.
copies before. I can maybe just use them.
Okay, so the Open Heartland, I'm just going to read off of my notes that I created in the application documents. They won't be complete, but it is my personal summary of the application. So the Open Heartland Membership ID program seeks to promote equity and fairness in support of immigrant families in Johnson County by offering a series of workshops, trainings, activities, materials, and resources tailored to support immigrant families, enabling them to access the tools and knowledge they need to navigate their new lives in Johnson County. In addition to providing direct support to families, this program will focus on fostering a unified network that empowers immigrant communities to champion their rights. The grant request of funds is $12,644. And I would open it up for discussion.
Yeah, because I've watched them over the years and because I know the administrator, I have a lot of confidence in this. I appreciate your concern about the sensitivity of the data. My concern right now is right now. and the necessity for, we need to do something. So perhaps it's, I'm looking at my other sheet. Because they ask for a rather particular amount, I have also confidence in that. But because they've received dollars the last 3 years, I can understand our caution. It just seems like such an urgent time.
Thanks, Mark. Mark, you've referenced something I put in my notes, so why don't I just bring that into open conversation?
That's helpful.
Yeah, so I had noted in our application review platform that, this work is just really important. And while I appreciate the need for organizations to both track and understand and speak to those who are receiving their programs, I'm a little bit concerned about the specific focus on registering new immigrants in our community right now and the sensitivity of that data. That's one component of this request. And I'm sure as an established organization, they are also considering that sensitivity too. The other thing that I noted is that they were a recipient in 2021, 2022, and 2024. And so my recommendation was for partial funding, but I open it up to others as well. Doug, I see that you're maybe off mute now. I wonder if you want to weigh in.
Yeah, I had to switch over to phone for audio. I agree. I think the concerns, and I noted this in my notes as well. My concern with the just having that sensitive data and tracking and even just calling it a membership ID program. I know we have concerns about that. I'm wondering, will their participation suffer because of that as well? I don't know how into the weeds we want to get on that as far as like micromanaging how they administer their program with the grant funding, but that would be my concern, is the data that's there and just the reluctance, both of us and of immigrants in the community, of participating in the project because of that.
Okay, thank you. Viana or Emily?
I just want to say that, it says that around 400 people, I think, were served this past year. That was before January 20th. So most of the organizations that I work with, they work with immigrants and with minorities, they have, witnessed a significant decrease in people attending even, know your rights, group, workshops. They have noticed decrease in people, seeking even assistance, even the food pantry. Even to get their own rights of getting food, they were afraid now that somebody's going to be, after them, tracing their steps and going after them. So I don't know if for this year is going to be carried as it was in the previous year, or it's going to have significant impact on those minorities and immigrants. It's hard to tell if this will, if the outcomes will be matching what they have in mind for this year or not.
This application, I believe, is similar to the next one, Escucha Mi Voz, if I remember correctly. Not, I don't want to move on to the next one, but I'm just saying, there are several applications that dealt with kind of know your rights and assisting immigrants with resources and, help in welcoming to the community, as well as, legal or, protective assistance as well. So I don't know if we do partial funding for this one, or if we say, I'm going to throw this out there. I also wouldn't be opposed to saying, they've already gotten 3 of these grants, and there are a couple others that are similar to this that we can fund instead.
Okay, thanks, Doug. Emily, I want to give you an opportunity to come in because I know that can be difficult virtually, if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I think that a collection of data is super important. Keeps things more organized. And in the time and place where we are politically, it's immigration and rights are a very important issue. But on the flip side of that, I'm also worried that tracking data disencourages participation, and that governmental overreach has been, I believe, been starting to ask nonprofits to release information. I think I could be wrong on that, but that is something that I've been hearing. So that would make me a little bit nervous on that one.
In the spirit then of recognizing that this is the highest average score of any of the applicants, I'd like to fund it, so I'm just going to suggest that we do 9,000 like we did in 2022.
Mark, do you have a proposal of what that attaches to in their budget?
I'm not looking at their budget. I'm looking at the application review from,
Here's the budget, you can look at it.
I don't need to be pointed about which dimensions. I know there was a question about the clothing or the shopping bags and such. I agree that that seems excessive. I'm more interested in Know Your Rights workshops. So I was going to depend on the administrators, the leadership, to decide if you didn't get everything you wanted, but this is how much you get, then you can decide responsibly what you're going to do with it, and then you report back to us.
I think in this case, because I've heard 3 commissioners express concern with the membership ID, I think I would recommend that if we are moving towards partial funding, that we actually make a recommendation then of which parts of the budget that we are in favor of. And
Okay,
it ultimately will be up to them to be responsible with the use of funds. Yeah.
Okay? I'm supportive of that.
Okay. I would just put forward then, I think, because I agree with you, Mark, I think we have really common ground there, that the Know Your Rights supplies, as well as the Know Your Rights workshop and training aspects of the budget, seem really like on par for me. I think some of the website ones I have questions about just because then we get into our consultant fees, which
Yeah.
I know we're limited in the percent of the budget that can go towards, or this percent of the grants that can go towards consultant fees.
So I have this one. You can keep this one. I have my copy too.
So with the 2 that I mentioned, that totals 4,000. I'm curious if commissioners have other suggestions or other proposals. And again, we can just almost pencil in this amount for now or any amount that we decide on at this moment in time
Yeah.
as we make our way through the rest of the proposed and grant reviews.
Are we only talking about the Know Your Rights supplies and then the Know Your Rights workshops and training, and not including the driving safety, health records, translation button, etc.?
That was my suggestion, Emily, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm open to discussion and other suggestions too.
I'm in favor of that suggestion.
Thanks, Doug.
Yes, me too.
Okay. Emily, Mark. Oh, Mark, you haven't had a chance to actually see the itemized budget in front of you. I'm sorry.
Now I've got it.
Okay.
I'm looking at it. Yeah, I've got a pen. I've got so many things here.
I know. It's a juggle. I know.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you about the what did you call it? Facilitators? Experts?
The consultants,
Yeah,
so
the
there's
consultants.
the last few items, so the
That's a
third
little
from the
muddy.
bottom, the website designer consultant. To create the new tab, I mean, that's great, and then, I guess quick math, we could give the equivalent of 20%, we could include the equivalent of 20% if we wanted to include that too.
There's no consultant fees that can be, that
Oh,
would make it
none.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, Stephanie, thank
So-
you.
And some of this, when they sign the agreement with the city, assuming city council approves, it would be outlined to them too.
Okay.
So I don't want you to feel like you have to figure out all of that, because that would be part of the agreement as to what they could and could not use the funds for.
Okay, thank you.
I would agree with the 4,000 amount right now, although I think maybe after going over, we could consider the driving safety, health records, and translation button.
Okay. And you said, I'm just making a note. That you said return to discuss driving safety and health records resources. Is that right, Emily?
Yeah.
Okay,
So we're at 4,000,
correct.
and that's kind of penciled for now, right?
As discussed currently with, before you weighing in, yes, yeah,
No, I'm okay with that.
okay.
Big, I tried to have myself organized so I'd be ready for tonight, and I got, this book is, I wasn't ready for that, so I was operating here with prints of your comments.
All good.
I'm catching on. We're good. Let's move on.
Okay. If everyone in room wants to start moving to the next one, escucha mi voz.
Oh, thank you. Oh, this is the other one. She's opening the other one.
But you can keep talking.
I'm good. I got this one.
Let me
She's
just
trying,
pull
yeah,
up
it's the same one. She's
my
trying to help you out to open the.
apologies, everybody.
All right, that had my writing in it, so. Okay.
Which part of the book is it in? Is it like early or later? Okay. All right, apologies, everybody.
Okay.
It's possible I might move to a digital copy.
You know, it takes more using this one.
Okay, thank you. Let me then just open by, again, offering my brief notes of my understanding of this project. This project is proposed to facilitate Know Your Rights workshops for immigrants and allies, the provision of direct legal aid and housing support to immigrant families, and the training of immigrant leaders in rights-based advocacy and organizing. Those are the three components of the project as proposed by them. There are a number of other partners that are involved with this. Looks like funding has been received by other entities in the community, but not from the city. And they have requested a budget totaling $20,000, which is the maximum we allowed requests for this year. Just walking through some of those budget components, not that the budget tells the whole story. And I know that we all carefully reviewed all the details of this one, but the budget includes funding for legal services training, including staff legal training programs, continuing education, legal service network memberships. It also includes emergency housing assistance, such as housing, rent, utility, food, clothing support, community legal education, such as these Know Your Rights workshops, trainings and materials, client transportation support, including rides to immigration and legal appointments, and program supplies. I would open it up for conversation and discussion.
So your comments were suggesting the $3,000 for the Know Your Rights workshops?
Is that directed to me, Mark?
I'm sorry, yes, Kelsey.
I did not put a proposed number. I felt that of the funds requested and the information that we have, it was easiest to see a justification for the Know Your Rights workshops. I think, as discussed in the last review, it's just a really important and vital thing right now. And I think as much as there can be coordination amongst those activities too, the better. But I know that different groups are able to speak with different partners too in some cases.
My comment was based on what you had just said, so.
Yeah, so I don't have a more specific narrowing of this that I've proposed already. I appreciate it has kind of three stools, right, that they've proposed. So the workshops are just one part, but the provision of direct legal aid as well as then housing support are the other two parts of this. And I just want to be thoughtful about that while we have all averaged a really high ranking of this, we do have nearly double the amount of funds available requested in this grant cycle.
Yeah. And remind me, when we bring this to the city council, is it with our comments? We bring some narrative rather than just a name and a dollar amount?
You'll have the opportunity to present it to the council.
Okay.
So,
To me personally, every time I look at any of the applications, I just stop when I see the amount that got funded from different organizations and different institutions, or like churches and foundations and other places. So for this one, they received around 318,000, some amount of from churches, from individuals, and from businesses. So this is aimed for this exact specific project.
Yep. That's my understanding.
Yeah, that was in their application.
I want to give a moment for those joining virtually to, the commissioners joining virtually to be able to enter conversation. Doug or Emily, anything you'd like to add or contribute?
I think when it comes to helping immigrants and legal aid, know your rights, I think Escucha Mi Voz is probably the foremost leader in Iowa City at that. And so I think that, if we're recognizing the importance of this issue, especially in the time that we are in, I would recommend full funding for Escucha Mi Voz. The partial funding, maybe without the housing assistance, but when we focus on the legal aid portion of it, I think they've established a really good partnership and a good reputation among the immigrant community, and just have the potential to really make a significant impact in this area and on this issue.
Doug, would you mind? I'm sorry, Emily. Doug, would you mind repeating the parts? You said full funding, but what you had said something more specific before that.
Yeah, my recommendation would be full funding, but if if there's an area of compromise or an area where we wanted to reduce a little, I think the housing assistance, we could focus on the legal aid portion and take the housing assistance amount out, since that need is covered by other organizations as well. But to me, I think
Okay.
I think it makes sense to fully approve here.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying. Sorry, Emily. Please go ahead.
You're good. I was just gonna say I fully second what Doug says on this one.
Okay. There's your back.
In their application, it's, I think, impressive. It says that the group has completed Capacity Building Institute and became a Department of Justice recognized and partially accredited to handle immigration legal aid cases directly in-house.
Yeah.
That seems very significant.
The housing advocate in me is housing first. Like, I think if you're trying to help anyone with anything in any aspect of their lives, ensuring that they have access to safe and healthy housing is the first step. So, Doug, I appreciate your suggestion for both of your suggestion for full funding, but also your proposal if we wanted to cut back. At this point, I'd probably, if it's at the cost of housing assistance in emergency cases, I would probably also then be in favor of full funding. And if others are on board with that, we can also come back to this at any point if we needed to.
So when you say full funding, you mean 20,000 per request? It's not like you're delineating pieces of the budget, okay?
So I think we have heard clearly from Doug and Emily. So Mark and Viana, I think if we can have your way in, we might be able to find our consensus.
Well, as you said, housing, as much as we try to help people, if they don't have a shelter to begin with, all the other things will be the least thing they're going to think about because they have to find, a roof on top of their heads before they seek any other help. It's just my issue in those applications that sometimes they are overlapping. Like, I have seen like multiple of them. They are talking about, know your rights, workshops and grants, seeking grants for the same reason. For housing, I think there's multiple ones too, addresses, housing and immigrants in different forms and ways. So if we're going to give a full grant for this one, when we go to the rest of them, we have to abide by the same rule by covering the expenses that relates to the same project, the same, description in their budget.
I think we've honored that so far. If you're referring to the Open Heartland
Yeah, I'm
request.
just saying ahead,
Yeah.
from here, even going on for the rest
yes,
of the
yep.
applications. So we have to carry this through
Yep.
all the other applications.
If I may, I disagree. I think that I don't think we will have enough money to fund all of those fully. I think the reason I'm suggesting we fully fund this one particularly is, like Mark pointed out, that they've done a lot of groundwork and they have registered with the Department of Justice. They have this great network of legal partnerships in the community that I think are stronger than some of the other applicants. So I think as we go forward, I don't think we necessarily have to fully fund everyone that's doing a Know Your Rights or immigrant outreach. This one particularly, I think that's one reason that everyone ranked it so highly is because of the strength of the organization, their track record, and their relationships that they've built in the community that position them in a way to really maximize the funding that they're given.
There is a lot of similarity between what they're doing in Open Heartland. I don't think I'm misspeaking there, am I?
You're not misspeaking, no.
And I think, did we settle in at Open Heartland at 4? We penciled that in?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
And just comparing apples to apples, it looks like the Know Your Rights workshops, trainings, and materials proposed by Escucha Mi Voz totals, if I'm reading that correctly, 3,000. So relatively comparable cost. I think if Dr. Liz were here, she would likely advocate that there was so much success in working with our grant recipients in this year that there's an opportunity, I think, for one of us to work directly with both of these organizations, should we choose to fund them both, on Know Your Rights workshops to understand the opportunity. I know, too, because that aligns with some of the ongoing initiatives from commissioners and from the Human Rights Commission to actually create more visible Know Your Rights avenues. And so I think there is an opportunity for this commission to be placed in a supportive mechanism, potentially facilitating greater coordination and coalition building if there isn't already some present there, which there very well could be.
Thank you.
Okay, so we had a proposal for full funding. I've heard general consensus and support, but Mark, can I confirm your thinking?
Because of the times, I'm so committed to both Mavoz and Open Heartland. So I'm supportive of what the commission will agree together to do. We simply have to tend to that. And Mavoz has credential. Open Heartland has Deb and her legacy. I'm sorry, Deb Duncase.
Okay, so it sounds like then we could continue with full funding in mind for Escucha-me-Voz. And again, we have the opportunity in this conversation to return to that, but it just helps us to understand availability as we continue. Okay, thanks, everybody. I know it's hard to have similar applications, at least in one component. Moving on to the Great Plains Action Society's request.
I'm good. I'm right here. Yeah. There you go. Is this one's got my writing in it? Okay.
I'm taking notes, so I probably have to find mine really quickly, but thank you.
You have it open? Stephanie, you have it open already?
I had it
Is it this one?
I had it ready for you.
Oh, sorry, it was the very next one in our packets. Thanks, Stephanie.
I'm just getting lost in all of them. I have to give you the wrong one.
Okay, so this project is one I think that we should all, relatively speaking, be familiar with from previous years. This is a grant request for a project that would convene the annual Truthsgiving celebration to educate on harmful colonialist myths on Indigenous history and culture, to garner media advocacy and promote mutual aid development and delivery. The requested funds total $20,000.
Because, have we funded Truth Giving before?
Yes. We funded in the past, Great Plains Actions the GPAS was a recipient in 2022 and 2023 of the Racial Equity and Social Justice Grant, $5,000 and $6,000 respectively.
I'm looking at their $25,000 budget. I just really want them to be in the Englert. And I really want that high visibility. I'm not sure about all of this travel, meals, bans. I suffice it to say I want to be supportive of this. I know that right now they're involved in a fundraising campaign to buy property and build a facility. I don't know how that's progressed, but that's not, so far as I can see, included in this budget. And it shouldn't be.
Mark, do you have a suggestion within that? So I heard you say in favor of the, wanting to make sure they're in the Englert.
I want them to have the money for the Englert, that $11,000. That's their projection. I'm going to guess that has some history. They know what they're talking about. Otherwise, I don't understand these event kind of things with honorarium and T-shirts I know it's probably all significant, but
I mean, I think if you're referring to the panel or the chef and the art show, those costs, is that what you're referring to, Mark?
yeah, well, and historically, we've given them about, I'm just going to surrender that to the recommendation of about half, so I recommend 11,000.
Okay. I can pile on here. I think it's really wonderful to see the expansion of the Truthsgiving program to be first an advocacy mechanism within group, but with other community members too, where people can speak to their own lived experience and their own understanding and the reteaching of really harmful myths that are still maintained across this community and elsewhere. I like the expansion of it. I think because they've been a past recipient for 2 times in the last few years, I had made a recommendation in my notes of essentially $9,000 of being the maximum here, recognizing that they had previously received $5,000 and $6,000. Now, maybe that logic doesn't actually hold, but I do think that the ability to pull this event off, they've demonstrated that. I think it would be excellent, and I hope that we can contribute in some way towards that.
And the reality is, we only have so much money to distribute, and we certainly want to make sure that they get some,
Yeah,
because we want this to happen.
yeah. Maybe let me pause to invite in Doug, Emily, Viana to hear more about your thoughts.
Well, I think this project is much needed, I think more awareness, more spotlight on the issue of colonization and the history of the indigenous people and what we are, well, I think we have been faced with so many things lately, and I think the more that people, they know about it and they have options and resources and places to go to, I think it will make a difference in our community, like to make it more welcoming for everyone, to build tolerance, acceptance, sense of belonging to everyone. The only thing in here is just the expenses. When I look into the budget and the asks, it's all just to cover the venue for the event itself. So I don't know if that's, was okay. Does it match with the Human Rights Commission? Like I don't know. Sometimes when you want to see a budget that you want to cover expenses that goes directly to something that, relates to human rights in general. So this is like the tools and the resources that they can build their events upon.
That's true. There's venue costs, but I think a big part of that evening event on that first column isn't actually the venue cost. It's about travel, pay, and meals for the performers, the band, the dancers,
Yes,
and the catering and the advertising for the Truthsgiving night
So
itself.
that's
yeah.
11,000.
And so there's a lot wrapped in there. There will be honorarium, as you mentioned, but it will be kind of how the event is pulled off. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing is they listed that they received funding, but they did not list the amount of it for this organization. It's just good to know, how much they're getting from other organizations.
Okay, let's turn to Doug and Emily for your thoughts and weighing in.
I'm in alignment, I think, with Kelsey and Mark. About half is what I was kind of thinking. My thought and what I put in the notes here, in my notes in the application, was that I like the idea that they're expanding the event and using the human rights grant to fund that expansion. But whether it's that half of it or if it's the half that gets them in the Englert, you know, either way, I think is a good contribution to an important event. I fully support giving them somewhere between 9 and 11,000. If we want to split the difference and just say 10, that works for me too.
Yep.
But I just will throw out one concern in that, you know, there were comments last year of, well, we give money to the same people all the time. You know, I completely agree. I absolutely support funding this project again this year, but you know, I just don't want certain organizations to become dependent on our grant as part of their ongoing, you know, annual budget is the only thing. So just with that caveat being put out there, I would support, around half the amount here.
Okay. Thanks, Doug. Emily?
Yeah, I agree with everything. Doug's point too of making sure that it's not like we're giving them like same money to the same organizations. And I think that also goes along with, I wish that they had put, as mentioned earlier, I wish that it had like put what other funding that they were receiving, the amounts on that. That would have been really helpful to clear up any confusion around that. But I still think it's something that we should fund. I'm comfortable with the $9,000 to $11,000 kind of range that we've put out.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks. Go ahead, Mark. Yep.
The other thing I'd add to this conversation is I read the land acknowledgement. We need to fund this and continue to fund this. We talk about reparations at the end of the land acknowledgement and we don't do anything about it. So this is at least a start in the right direction.
Yeah, I was going to make the point too that of feedback when we presented our recommendations last year to City Council, there were questions along the lines too, and feedback from the community of what about the groups that we represent, right? And are we thinking about that with equity across the entire city and the city grant programs? So thanks to Stephanie for preparing the previous grants recipients, even across the other programs. So we have that information we're also able to take into account. I would just note that this is the only application we have, grant request we have, from a group that directly represents Indigenous members of our community. And so to your point, Mark, I have no problem with continuing to grant them this year. And on the proposed kind of how much will we approve, I'm also in favor of the $10,000. I would just note for everybody that they did technically request in their budget $25,000, but we have a max cap of a maximum of $20,000 that can be granted this year. That's a change from last year that might not have just been caught by all applicants. So.
And we've only got $100,000 to distribute, right?
Correct. That is correct.
And we're about 25% there.
Let me just, before we do all of that, let me just check. Seems like we're all in agreement on $10,000 for GPAS.
Well, I like the 11,000. Sorry.
Okay.
Well, you know, because they have another 1,000 for, you know, padding for unexpected added expenses, if we don't want to consider the first 11,000, so.
I would propose then what we've done for others so far, which is let's see if we have it. Let's come back and see if we can do the additional at the end. Does that sound okay to you?
Yes, so.
Okay.
Yes, that's fine.
So I have starred that. Oops.
Well, look at how I opened right to it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I just look at that, it's opened right to it.
All right, great.
Nice, something.
So our next application up for review is from the Right House of Fashion. The total amount requested is $14,754. I wonder, I don't have a succinct summary of this one in my notes, but I do have kind of my reflections if you all just want to me to start with that. I personally appreciate the use of fashion and arts as a means of education and building community, as well as fostering leadership amongst students that are in this program, and that the proceeds of this effort would actually go directly to supporting Black student unions in high schools in our community, and further servicing their efforts towards building community and making change amongst their schools and their communities. So primarily, this is for, the costs include an instructor, a field trip for participants, and an ending, is that the right one? Ending celebration? Am I looking at the right budget? Yes.
I think I read they got from ARPA, they got $100,000.
Yes. Yes.
Is that for this year? It's current?
Well, it does not specify if it's this year.
Oh, I know what happened here. Some of the details in their budget aren't printed in our packets because it's a subsequent line that's being covered up.
Well, the three that I have here, it looks pretty close to 14,754.
No, the total amount's great. There's no problem there. But when you see the line that says instructor lead setup meetings develop,
Yeah.
there's more text in that
I see.
box that we aren't seeing in this form. And I don't have a direct note about what that included without looking it up, unfortunately. There's a note, one of the commissioners in our review notes noted a question about whether funding requests aimed at artists' fees would be eligible or not on this. Stephanie, I wondered if we might be able to have clarification on that.
I'm just looking over the exclusions here.
Thank you.
I think that would be fine. I think it would be okay.
Okay, thank you.
You're saying like an honorarium or something like that?
That's my understanding of what it is.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's okay.
If, from memory, I think the rest of what that box says is it starts to describe the art therapy facilitation sessions, I think.
Ultimately, it would be up to the city attorney to decide, but
Yeah.
I guess I see an artist performing a little different than a consultant fee in the traditional sense, but,
Yeah.
they may disagree with my opinion.
So is the 560 hours, is that 560 students?
No, it's per student for 10 students, right? As I understood.
It's not clear to me.
Oh, no, it's 840 per student, which that amount for the 8,400, the first one.
Yeah, I'm doing the math. It's $15 an hour for an instructor. That's pretty cheap, but, what's 560 hours? What is it, a quarter of a year at 40 hours a week?
I just have one issue with the application, that when it says, like reading multiple times, it's like have a direct impact, momentary impact on the youth. Like there's no way to to oversee if it's really after that's gonna be, you know, a lifelong, you know, impact, an everlasting impact. So it's like an annual project. Whenever it's over, it's over. I don't know if I misunderstood.
Oh,
you
I
know.
see. I see what you mean.
Because this is one of those occasions when you realize that you want, maybe after the fact, young people knew they stood on the shoulders of giants because of their relation and their experience. And that you follow up or how it concludes, evaluates, it's down the way.
You know, I work with teens and with youth, and I'm sure that, you know, building the platform for them and, you know, putting the stepping stones for them, it helps, you know. But as I said, as a comprehensive project, like will those 10, you know, youth be really impacted and they carry it to other youth and then the program will continue? Will it stop after this, you know, if they don't receive any other funding? Like if we get the fund for this project for this year, what about next year? So they are dependent totally on the funding of, you know, the city to carry on.
I think that could be said for any project that's been presented to us. We just have to see that it has an impact that will be the best use of funds that we can recommend. And so in some cases, yes, maybe that means it's a multi-year thing. But in other cases, it's actually really great for this commission to receive projects that are time-bound because we can see a start, we can see a finish, we can understand the impact that's intended from it. So I don't see that as a limiting factor in my review of this, but I appreciate your comments, Fiona. From my perspective, I'm having trouble remembering what the rest of that box says and evaluating the cost related to that. But I think that, you know, and I did kind of a poor job of explaining it at the beginning of our opening of conversation on it. I've been really impressed upon by the impact of trauma-informed therapy in sessions and the peer community aspect of that too.
Yes.
So one of the things that I loved about this proposal and proposed program is that there is this creation of community specifically for the 10 youth apprentices, but potentially also tapping into the communities across the BSUs at our junior, I think there's a junior high included too, and high schools. And then creating kind of an outward event too with that. I did really appreciate that.
You know, I'm always advocating for the youth and, you know, striving to find, roadmaps for them to follow and go through and, and I wish that this impacts, bigger number of students. That's not only limited to 10 of them, but hopefully it's going to grow by the year it goes, Let's see.
Emily, Doug, I'm interested in your thoughts. I also would put a plug that if you happen to be able to see the full description of the budget at the moment, that would potentially be helpful in our conversations, at least for me.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't see the budget at all.
Yeah.
The file just doesn't open for me. So
It's an Apple file.
yeah, I'm no help there. Yeah.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, I think, it's a great project, right house of fashion, again, great reputation. I think the work they do is great. And Kelsey, I agree with the trauma informed therapy and, everything that is in here. Again, I don't know if it's my trauma from the city council meeting last year or what, but it seems like we've this is another organization that we've funded multiple times. But again, when we look at representation, how many other applications here are directly impacting Black youth? So I think it's a community that's in need, and the work that Right House does is stellar. So yeah, unfortunately I can't see the budget, so I can't speak to if we're able to parse out any sort of partial funding. I do appreciate that they didn't just ask for the max 20,000 like a lot of places do. But yeah, if you're able to see even part of the budget and are able, want to do some sort of partial funding, that's fine. If we want to go full in here, I guess I probably want to hear a little bit more about what exactly is in that budget since I wasn't able to see it at all.
Yeah.
So those are my thoughts on this one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I might be able to help out because I can see the budget, I think. The instructor lead set up meetings develop is the description with 560 hours a week for $15 an hour. That would total $8,400. The field trip for participants, there's 30 participants, 150 unit costs totaling 4,500. The ending celebration food and beverage, 1853.60. And that's the same.
Emily,
over there.
can you poke on the instructor lead line and get that to open up so you can see what else is in there? Just in that box?
It only says develop for me.
Okay.
I'm sure if I download, honestly, because it won't show up online, so I'll download it and see what happens.
I don't know what you just said. I mean, I don't understand what you just said.
Just gonna try to download it maybe. Something.
Okay, yep. For the instructor lead, it says set up meetings, develop, plan, and create curriculum. This person will work 20 hours a week. And then it says 4, but it doesn't continue after that.
Okay. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Is there anything else under the ending celebration? It just seems like that might be a list as well.
The field trip also has stuff. It's cost for each student to visit and meet artists. And then the ending celebration is food and beverage programs, speakers, gifts to students.
Thank you, Emily. I want to give you a chance to weigh in, actually. You provided us with a clarification, but I'm curious for your thoughts on the proposal overall.
I quite like this one. I think it's hitting a group that's not that's like represented pretty much within specifically this project with Black youth. I also think it's really great in that it removes all barriers needed by providing financial compensation to students or to young people is better word. And I think it's skills and an experience that will go with them for the rest of their life, especially because it's targeting at risk, is what it said in the report.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Emily. So do we have any recommendation for, it seems like we're all in favor of pursuing some form of recommendation for grant recipients of this proposal. Do we have an amount that we would like to suggest?
For the purpose of moving it on, I'll suggest 10,000. I really like the idea of the field trip and what Emily had shared with us about what the leader's going to do. As I say that, I'm not including 12,900, so.
Sorry, Mark, I didn't understand your last point. Not included.
If you add up 8,400 and 4,500, you get 12,900, and I was suggesting 10. And it's like, why didn't I suggest 12,900?
Oh, I see. I would be in support of 10 for this project.
And again, reiterating, we'd like to fund all of these completely, and we can't. We only have $100,000.
Mm-hmm.
I support 10.
Thanks, Doug.
Mm-hmm.
I would as well.
Thanks, Emily. Fiona?
Well, I don't mind 10, but I was thinking, that the field trip for the participation, I think that's the healing part of it, not just the work itself. So usually, teens, they bond and then they get out of their shells and they feel confidence and comfortable with each other, when they're outdoor, when they're doing things together outside of the project that they're dealing with. And I think that will give them an opportunity to heal, to build up, self-confidence, and go on from there, maybe uplifting others on the way.
Absolutely. I wonder if because they've already received other grants, if they can keep that in mind too when it comes to the instructor lead costs. I would hope that they're able to prioritize the field trip with whatever funds are allocated. Yeah. Okay. All right. In the spirit of moving forward, I'm going to go ahead and notate 10,000 earmarked for the Wright House of Fashions project, working with local BSUs. I know too that the city will help also in the use of funds as well. So next we're looking at the request from the bike library.
Oh, thank you.
I'm almost there. I got it. Tell me alphabetical, I'm working on it.
Back at the beginning of our packets.
There she is. I knew she'd get it in there.
Okay, so this project seeks to expand the outdoor, I think primarily outdoor courtyard of the bike library here in Iowa City to improve its functionality and comfort, adding shade structures, seating options, and outdoor educational resources. In addition to that, they would like to improve community engagement and connection, developing relationships among program patrons by hosting social hours in this courtyard. And third, they're looking for expanded access to education and skills development, particularly serving 100 additional first-time riders from marginalized communities annually. And this would directly contribute to their overall mission of fostering inclusivity, resilience, and social change. They have requested the maximum amount of $20,000. We have a detailed budget in our packet that we can see the whole thing of, which is great.
I love it that they cordially request 20,000.
Mm-hmm. So I'll just start our discussion and would welcome others to come in as well by saying that I think that the creation of public goods and third spaces is a unique value to our community. I think this would have to be coupled with direct outreach and support to be able to directly impact communities that should benefit from our racial equity and social justice grants. But I do appreciate that their application details their existing relationships with several organizations that would do exactly that and facilitate that. And thanks to them for including that in the application and making that clear. And I would just add that given the bike library's history, they do seem equipped to continue this outreach and the building, both physically and metaphorically, of community. They did receive a racial equity and social justice grant in 2021, so a few years ago, of $4,000. In their budget, it does look to be that they've included a summary of their full construction budget in terms of their project costs. And so I think the 20,000, by my understanding, as long as I'm not reading that incorrectly, would just be a portion of that total budget that they've shared with us.
Yeah, that they have a facilities project.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so grateful that you said it's a third place.
Mm-hmm.
And because I've known people that have been there, and I've gone in and seen it. It is clearly that. Such a gift.
I know there
I
was
think there's
some,
a really good old. Oh, sorry.
actually,
Sorry.
Doug, I'd
I
love
was-
for
I
you to
wasn't
go. Please go
calling.
ahead. Yeah.
Okay. I think it's a really good alignment with the city's core values. You've got the climate resilience, the climate change action plays into this as well. And in addition to the fantastic point that you made of it being a third space. So fully in support of this. I think it reaches across cultures, ethnicities, race. We've talked about having representation. I think this is a great example of a project that that reaches and kind of erases those boundaries. And so it has a broad appeal demographically as well. So fully in support of this. Just a matter of how much. And open to ideas there. It's a big project. They have received other funding. I wouldn't be opposed to fully funding this actually. But open to hearing what others think.
Can somebody say succinctly for me what they want, what they're going to do with the money?
They're going to use it towards building their outdoor.
So it's just going to be
community space.
another 20 grand toward that project.
That's the request, yeah.
Haven't we avoided that kind of thing?
You would have, you are our longest standing commissioner.
Well, I mean, I just don't know that we funded brick and mortar kinds of things, that we funded programming, people.
Yeah. That's my memory as well, yeah.
I just about, because I've talked to Kate about the need for a space for table fellowship. And if I could read that into the budget, I'd support it, but I didn't see it there. Maybe the shade audience and the seating. I mean, that's what makes it a distinctive third place. That you come and work on your bike, but then you're with people.
Yeah, I think they've got seating under supplies there, so they're thinking about the use of the space as well as what it will physically need. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it was hard for me to rank this application because, it wasn't a direct, project that's impacting, the living of humans directly. So it is a step toward, providing them with a, external third place to be there, gather and do things. So I wasn't sure if this grant covers, the physical buildings, like.
Stephanie, it doesn't sound like we have any restrictions on that, but can you provide clarification?
It probably is going to matter if it's determined to be part of operational cost.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the only issue I was, having a hard time, following through.
Would it be worthwhile then for us to offer an itemized or more specific approval of the grant request for a portion of their budget, or would we need to understand that answer first?
Well, I think if the commission agrees on the project I think it's, the organization is going to have to determine what scope they take based upon the restrictions of the agreement. So I think supporting a project is different than actually trying to tell them what they can, like, because that's going to be part of the agreement. Either they're going to be able to or not. So I guess I'm saying I don't know if you want to get into the weeds about
For
that
sure.
because, you know, and I think all the projects, just with the amount that they're asking for, if there are restrictions per the agreement, I think that they can shift the cost to other things. And this is a reimbursement unless there's a special, exception. So,
Okay.
they're going to have to spend the funds before they get reimbursed for them anyways.
Okay. I noted too in the notes in our application and reviews that at least two, if not more, commissioners noted that sometimes building projects have delays. So particularly as we're in a reimbursement mode for this one, should we approve it? Just something to keep in mind. With that in mind, and given that there's other requests, and I think, I would actually propose partial funding. I think it's a great thing, but maybe there's going to be restrictions on what they can do with the funds anyway, and potential delays. I would hate for a full $20,000 to be tied up this year if others might be able to use it immediately this year if the building experiences delays. But I would love to recommend a funding, and I would just suggest $10,000 towards this project.
I'm on board with that.
Thanks, Doug.
I am as well.
I am on the partial funding. I'm really focused, though, on what makes for a good third place. And it's the seeding. And it's the planters, soil plants, it's all that life-giving stuff. So that's 8,500, so I'm okay with 10. I just, I don't want to spend human rights money on asphalt removal. I mean, I can't make myself let myself do
Yeah.
that.
They might not be able to anyway, it sounds like. We'll have to see. But I think we're agreed that the project overall will be a benefit to our community and to the groups that should benefit from racial equity and social justice grants. So, Emily, I'm sorry, did you have a chance to weigh in yet? You might have, and I just might have forgotten.
I didn't. The only thing I would like to add is that I like that it's outside. It becomes really a place to. It is truly like freely a place for people to come in and out, no matter where they are, what time of night, what time of day. But yeah, I agree with the $10,000.
Okay, great points, Emily. Okay, all right, we will pencil that amount into our recommendations and take a breath and continue on. Just checking, I assume we're okay to continue, but does anyone need a 5-minute break at this moment in time? No. Great, let's continue. All right, our next request is from Dream City.
Oh, yeah, this one.
I'm working on it.
It's toward the beginning.
I got it.
Okay, so this is a proposal for a project that will develop a community strategic plan, a roadmap that outlines collaborative strategies to ensure that Iowa City becomes a place where all residents can thrive by convening a community conversation series. This would include 4 to 6 facilitated conversation sessions that bring together community leaders, organizations, and residents to discuss key issues such as racial equity, economic opportunity, and access to services. I would just add on that they intend that this strategic plan, as developed by Dream City, could serve as a guiding framework for building a more just, equitable, and vibrant Iowa city. So I infer within that it could feed into even city-level practices and decision-making and strategic foresight as well.
Yeah, I think that's what Fred intends.
I'm forgetting all of my things to say, so let me just add that they have requested $15,000, including project coordination and facilitation and workshop fees, meals and snacks, development of a community report that includes data collection and analysis. I think that includes both the printing of that report as well as the time it takes to do that report. A community presentation event, including venue rental, marketing, printed materials, and then other materials and supplies. I can start. I'll just say that reading through, I thought this was really well thought out. I thought it looked like a really interesting conversation series that would benefit our community. And I wanted to commend the development of this community building and collective effort, even like to the point that we're receiving it written right now. It would be helpful to know more about the anticipated timeline. And I had some questions about like if those 4 to 6 conversations would be iterative or if they would be with different groups. So is it the same group meeting multiple times to develop a strategy, or is it outreach to different groups in order to develop the strategy? But one way or another, it's a great outreach effort. And I would hope that this project's work, whether we are using, racial equity and social justice funds or not, and if it can take place, I would hope that it could inform leaders across Iowa City and shift power to those who can represent their own lived experience and interest. Mm-hmm. I don't have a specific recommendation of funding allotment, and I would just also open it up for further conversation.
I can go ahead. I agree with a lot of what the notes in the application, from other commissioners said, and Kelsey, what you just said. I think it's a very worthwhile and meaningful project. In fact, I think we've talked about doing something like this as well. So I think it's something that we can support. Some of the questions I had were similar to what you said, Kelsey. The timeline, what exactly do these look like? These conversations look like, and then I think in the budget there's about, I want to say $6,000, I think, for project coordination, and it just seemed like it was kind of this catch-all bucket of a lot of things that I'm not quite sure what was in there. It appears that it is, payment for facilitation and, kind of consulting fees or facilitator fees, which, I don't believe are, allowed to fund, or that we traditionally don't. I don't know if it's a matter of permission or, statute or what, but, so my suggestion would be to fund the kind of more tangible material things here, which would be, I think, the remaining 9,000, or maybe I've got those numbers flipped. I'd have to look at the budget again. But yeah, those are my thoughts. Great project. I just think, we need to kind of parse out that budget a little bit. And yeah, it's 6,000 is the project coordination, outreach, and facilitation. So I'm not sure, it says staff time is the category. So I'm not sure if that's eligible. So I would say, that we fund the remaining 9,000 instead of that. So.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Doug. Emily, because I called on you last time. I don't want to do that again. I want to give you a chance to weigh in.
I mean, I think that funding, like strategic planning, is super important. I think that the way they do this is very well thought out. I agree with some partial funding. And I want to keep in mind the other organizations that we have coming up. Since we have $100,000. That would be my thoughts on this.
Okay, thank you, Emily. Fiona, do you have more
Yes,
thoughts?
I do agree. I think partial funding is the way to go here. I just loved how they stated that in this city, the result will be the city will be one where no one is left behind. So I look forward to see, the work they can come up with and the outcomes too. And it's going to be very impactful. But looking at the budget, as they say, some of them are not eligible. So I think I'm agree with the partial budget of, not sure they say 9,000.
Yes.
We do the calculations.
I have some questions in the same vein of thinking about the third item, the community report and the plan itself. So while the plan itself is really important, there might be a lot of staff time in that and in that budget item. That budget line totals 3,500, and I think it will be within their responsibility to make sure that city funds are used appropriately and legally. But given that that might be, printing can be a cost, but if we did 7,500, that would be half funding this project, and it might account for removing some of the potentially staff time that we can't cover in that category.
I'll weigh in there with you, Kelsey, 7,500.
Okay, thanks, Mark.
Okay, that's fine with me too.
Okay, thanks, Fiona. I see a nod from Doug. Emily, what do you think about that?
Yes, that's fine with me. Sorry, it cut out for a second.
No problem. Okay, and I just want to reiterate that we love this project. It sounds like we are really in support of it. And I don't want the careful discussion about the use of funds to detract from that. The commission is really in support of this and look forward to hearing updates about that.
And they're extinguished anyways.
We are going to move to discuss the request from Greater Iowa City Incorporated next. Okay, give me 1 second.
Yes.
Okay. That's German, sorry.
No, you're fine.
Okay, apologies, everyone. I'm just going to start by reading my notes. I haven't yet fully found it in the packet, but I'll just open up for conversation and find it in that period of time. But there was a request for $3,000 to support the Inclusive Economic Development Collaboration, which through inclusive outreach and community building will develop a definition of inclusive economic development created by and grounded in local community-centered lived experience. The idea, too, is that this project is anticipated to feed into the creation of a community-guided fund housed at the Community Foundation of Johnson County. I personally appreciated the coalition building aspects of this project, as well as the partner-centric model, working across groups in the community who are well-placed to carry out the project. And that this definition building, this shared definition building and potentially coalition building would help to define how funding might ultimately be shared and distributed down the road. Considering, and we've already referenced it in this conversation, understanding how we as human rights commissioners can best support our community with the grant requests that we receive on not too dissimilar from a perspective, but really thinking about racial equity and social justice. I can appreciate the need for community-centered conversations in order to have a shared understanding and a shared approach. So I personally, I liked this proposal. I hope that the project's definition will inform future iterations of the Iowa City Strategic Plan and strategic priorities as well. And because I don't have my budget directly in front of me at the moment, I can't say a detailed breakdown of it, but maybe someone else can jump in and start offering that.
It just seems to me that this group has requested funds from us before under the title Greater Iowa City Better Together 2030. Is that correct?
Yeah, last,
2 years ago?
It was a welcoming, is it welcoming week? That's what they got funded for in the past. Most recently from the commission.
On the budget question, Kelsey, the budget is $2,000 for facilitation, to pay for a facilitator, prep and facilitating 3 meetings. And then the other 1,000 is split between childcare and food.
Okay. Thank you, Doug. Thanks.
Yeah.
Just want to recognize too that there's no venue fees here because Dream City has already said that they would provide space for this conversation or the consultations to take place.
Where do we stand on funding facilitators and paying facilitator or consultant fees? I know there's kind of a fine line there between, honoraria for speakers and educators and more of consulting type things. So what are people's thoughts on that? Because that's really the bulk of this request, right?
I don't know how much we paid Jennifer Horn Fraser to do our strategic planning, but the people, they have gifts to do this. It's amazing what they can pull together. I don't know Laura Gray, but I'm supposing she has similar gifts.
Yeah, I'm not questioning. I'm just questioning as far as what we're allowed to fund.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
Laura Gray is the director of the equity and diversity office for this Iowa City Community School District, and she led the community equity committee that I served on before it was outlawed, and she's a fantastic facilitator. So yeah, no question there. And I think, this is kind of low hanging fruit, right? It's only 3,000. It's a small win. That's my only question is, are we does this fall within the parameters of our funding ability?
Well, if we recommend it, we're going to find out.
I would say too that there's a lot of aspects to this project. There's a lot of parts and moving pieces to it, and that if anything within what they've proposed in their specific budget is unavailable or improper use of funds, I think that it would still be worthwhile for that amount of money to go towards this project and other areas and other aspects.
So it sounds like we have a go. Emily, Viana?
Not sure. The question again is about if this eligible or not, you know. It's a great project, but then I don't see a deadlines or like a specific dates, you know, for the project take place. I'm not sure they miss, like it says the first gathering, second pre-gathering, you know, but did not have like a deadline or.
Yeah, the greater.
The grant funds for a year, right? So they have a year to spend the money and to get reimbursed for it. So I think that, as long as it happens within there, I don't think, I haven't seen a lot of, it's not like any the other application said we're starting on, July 1st and et cetera. So, and I think, Greater Iowa City Inc. and the organizations that they're working with have a really good track record. I'm not worried about that part of it. And Kelsey, to your point, I think, yeah, if they're not allowed to pay Laura Gray 2,000, there's plenty of other places in this project that they would be able to redirect that funding to, I believe.
Okay.
So yeah,
My concerns about that have been assuaged. I had some concerns about the facilitator cost, but if we think that there's not a big deadline or the cost can go somewhere else, I'm in support.
Okay, thank you, Emily. Okay, so unless there are any objections, and I am pausing there, I think we'll move forward with a recommendation of $3,000 as requested towards this project. And recognizing that if it's not in the budget as described to us, that they will have an appropriate use of funds otherwise. Okay, our next request comes from the Immigrant Welcome Network of Johnson County. I can give you your book back if you want that. It should be just right behind it, right? Yeah. Okay. So my understanding, again, this is my brief overview of the project. Any mistakes are my own personal ones, but I summarize this project as including both the Voices of Resilience monthly community event series to elevate immigrant stories and raise awareness about the systemic barriers newcomers face. And the second aspect is the purchase of a 7-passenger van for the transportation of immigrant and refugee families to critical services across Iowa City, Coralville, and Cedar Rapids. The request is for $20,000. And we can see in our budget how they have requested that. You can see the different aspects of the two different elements of this proposal detailed there, with the passenger van totaling $12,000 and some vehicle and insurance fees with that as separate from that as well. And then event supplies and some personal stipends, as well as marketing and outreach materials.
I'm going to jump in first here, if
Please do,
that's
Doug.
okay,
Yep.
Kelsey. This is a repeat request from last year, and last year we resoundingly rejected the idea of funding a van, the purchase of the van, and for various reasons. I would suggest that we continue that line of thinking. And I would suggest I would recommend funding the conversation series, which I believe ends up with an amount of around $7,000.
Doug, I totally agree. Thanks for opening up our conversation with that suggestion. Emily, why don't we just keep moving through virtual if you're ready to jump in now?
Sure, I had a question. What were the reasons, because I wasn't here last year, what were the reasons for rejecting the van?
Yeah, I can hop in, but please, others.
Well, I can hop in because if you look at the budget, they responded to why we rejected it, that you can't buy a van without having registration, insurance, fuel, maintenance, and repair, and somewhere you have to include that. So the applicant has at least given an attempt at that. But boy, talk about something that's expendable. It's a van. And where do you find a $12,000 used van? Anyway.
Yeah, I would say that that's very true, and I think in my notes I note that, and I think this did come up in our conversation last year too, that vehicles need maintenance. So you could even find the $12,000 vehicle and it might have a $2,000 repair next year. You know what I mean? Like, or more, especially with getting a larger used vehicle. And while I know that this organization is reputable and they would use the funds carefully and they would make sure that they were able to maintain anything that they had in their property, there's no doubt of that. We don't maintain that ourselves on this commission. And the idea of enabling the purchase of something that could only have limited use and for a limited number of people, potentially over more than just 1 year, yes. It's a risk that I don't personally feel comfortable absorbing in the use of racial equity and social justice funds.
As I recall, we had other applicants last year requesting, some amount of money to purchase, vans to be used as a medical transportation for those people who needs it. And when we viewed it as private investment, where, if we give it that set, then, they make a profit out of it, for that individual who applied last year. So I think, as we said, this was discussed really deeply last year. And I think I agree with all of you that we can, look at the rest of the things and honor them.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you all for sharing the inputs from last year.
But you know what? I have a big family. Like running one van with 8 people in the family, it barely lasts that long if it's a used van. So imagine having 18 families with 100 individuals, trying to transport them, to their locations, whether, offices or, medical appointments, immigration, needs. I think it will not last for that long when you have a used van. So I don't think that's a good investment from my experience.
Gotcha.
Thanks. Emily, did you want to continue?
Yeah, I'm happy to with the investing in the honorarium, doing that, especially because it aligns with what we were talking about earlier. There's a huge focus and need in our community for that sort of event. So I would be in full support of partial funding for that.
Okay. Mark, I'm wondering if you had a chance to weigh in. I know you weighed in on the van already. I'm wondering if you have a weigh in on the proposal overall for partial funding as requested by Doug or suggested by Doug.
Because I think it's so important, I'm willing to support that. The idea that this is going to work during the market is, I'm always optimistic, but the crowd is so loud, and to get anybody's attention, it's very difficult. But you guys know more about this particular endeavor than I do, so I'm very supportive of the group. And did you have a number, Doug, that you suggested?
7,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I'm
I'm
not,
okay with that.
Unless I missed it, I'm not sure this was one that did have dates mentioned for those series. It says in 2026, they plan to launch the Voices of Resilience.
Okay, I got confused about another one.
Yeah, no, that's okay. It's easy to, my brain is swimming already right now in these reviews. It's totally understandable. So that just raised the question for me of, Stephanie, can you remind us of by when the funds would need to be spent in order to be eligible for reimbursement?
June 30th of 2026.
Okay. So then what we're talking about is they would only have the first half of next year to do the series if they plan to launch it in
Okay, I
2026.
see it.
Or they could move it up too.
Yeah, they could start it early if they had, yep, okay.
So we have a plan?
And I guess, yeah, I would say, yeah, and thank you for bringing up that time frame for that. So yeah, I would say if we fund this at 7,000 and we say that it's for that project that would need to be completed within the grant time frame.
Yep, great. Okay, I have heard largely consensus on that. So we have agreed to a partial funding of $7,000 for the Immigrant Welcome Network of Johnson County. Okay, our next one for review comes from Mogul Consulting, but this is on behalf of another organization. But if you're looking for it in the books, it will come in alphabetical order under Mogul. All right.
Yeah, this is the one I was thinking about.
Would you all like me to continue with my quick, brief overviews?
Please.
Yes, please.
Okay. So the Unity Exchange, formerly the Diversity Market, has provided a request for funds related to 4 community marketplace events that offer affordable vending opportunities for 60 entrepreneurs from marginalized communities, which will feature cultural performances that amplify diverse voices, foster community conversations, and incorporate structural educational elements on economic and cultural rights. They have requested $20,000. And Mark, I think to your point about dates, this is the one that I think.
Yeah, this is the one I was confused by.
Yeah, no problem. But just recognizing and bringing that thought forward here. And I would just open it for conversation.
This is a tough one for me. It duplicates some of the others. You know, there are a lot of community conversations happening. To Mark's point of, you know, how effective will it be if there's, you know, conflicts with other significant community events? And then I also noted in the budget there's some staff salary pay, you know, stipends in there that wouldn't be fully eligible for funding either. So I know it's a tough one because, you know, partially funding it, if we're saying we're only going to partially fund it because we don't really believe that it's going to be a really effective project or it is duplicative, then what's the point in funding part of it, right? So I'm struggling with this one a little bit, but I'm interested to see what others think.
Maybe I misunderstood. I see the Saturdays, and I'm going to suppose it's not at the Saturday market downtown because they need porta potties. So it must be someplace else.
It would be at the, I'm blanking on the name, but it would be at the South Side Market Space and Marketplace.
Okay, thank you. I can visualize that.
That's my assumption, anyway.
Yeah, I'm looking at page 3 of 5, the Unity Exchange, that paragraph that starts there.
Yeah, I think personally, Doug, I hear your point completely, and I agree. I think in this case, I think it's great that it's happening this summer, and I know that it's an effort that has, it's the continuation of a project and in a reimagined way. But so I really liked the elements to it that would, really create a cultural aspect to it and a place of celebration alongside an economic space too. And that's just wholly unique from the farmers market mornings that we have already in Iowa City. It's just a wholly different model and different opportunity. I think in the case of some of the details in the budget, I really appreciate that they offered a detailed budget. And I appreciate that these 4 events will probably even have expenses beyond what's been shared. But I would personally recommend partial funding, primarily so that we can have the best use of our racial equity and social justice funds and spread them out as far as we can, but also so that we can make sure that it's, I would avoid funding staffing and administration, and I would also avoid funding the vendor support. Again, not because those aren't valid things to be funded, but because of our specific considerations on the use of our recommended funds available.
So are you leaning in toward something like 10 or 15?
Yeah, I was trying to do a little bit of math. If anyone else has another proposal, though, definitely share it.
So is the vision that this is going to happen in that parking area by the post office? Or is it going to be at the park on the south side?
I don't think it's specified. I don't know.
Huh.
Again, with this, all those projects, the issue is with what's been going on, there's no guarantee that those immigrants and those minorities will be showing up as we expected them to. It's a very critical time that we're going through right now. So while we're supporting this, but still, there's, yes, like sometimes it exposes them and, putting them at risk. Like not only for this project, but, even the multiple projects that we, covered before. So I don't know how it's going to look like if it's re-implemented or, because it says here, like, they're going to have 60 entrepreneurs from their marginalized communities. I wonder if they're going to be able to bring 60 of them. The other thing is in the budget that it covers the insurance.
Apologies.
Oh, sorry.
Emily's talking.
Go ahead, Emily.
No, go ahead and finish. I thought you were done. Go ahead.
It's okay. So I just was looking at the budget and thinking about the insurance, like, to cover the insurance and the permits from the city. So is that something that, we cover too? Can be covered under this grant?
I think what I'll make a proposal, and then maybe that would, well, actually, no, let me go to Emily. I don't know the answer to your question. Let's go to Emily. Sorry, Emily.
All good. I would also recommend partial funding. I think economic development is always very important and another way to support our immigrant community. Although acknowledging that it might put people at risk, I think that would be an important thing to note if we can note in things, and also to note that it doesn't happen at the same time as another. I think if it happened on the same day, it necessarily wouldn't be a bad thing. As attention to the farmers market could draw attention to that, as long as it doesn't exist at the same time.
So Emily, you're saying that you would just encourage them to choose a time that doesn't conflict with other ongoing activities in Iowa City?
I mean, yes. I mean, it could be the same day even, but I would recommend, because even if the same day, people could be in a market going mood, capitalizing on that opportunity, but recommending that if there's a major event that's similar, that they might not want to host it at the exact same time, albeit it could be the same day.
Thanks, Emily. Okay, so I have a recommendation for partial funding. I was going back and forth, but I think the first two categories that are shared in their budget, those total $6,000. And I think that I would either propose that or $10,000, which could also then include the entertainment and programming aspect as well, too. I know that we've had diverse conversation about performers' fees and things like that, and the cost of setting up stages and time, which is why I think I lean towards a suggestion of 6,000 instead, but I just wanted to give a couple of options.
I was going to suggest 10,000 with that same breakdown, Kelsey. But 6,000 would help us spread a little bit more to what we got, like four organizations left, 4 applications left. So I'm okay with 6,000 unless anyone else feels really strongly about 10.
I'm good with that. The insurance and the county permits seem to be significant. And as we describe these kinds of things, once they receive the grant, then they spend the money. Do we give them specific directions when we give them the money? In this case, like onto what you were suggesting, Kelsey?
It's a reimbursement. Mm-hmm. So they have to give us invoices.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
So this is the first year for, to have it like reimbursed, So there's a chance that some of those organizations will not meet or will not, follow through maybe, will not provide receipts,
Yeah.
So it's...
Well, and it's another way of responsibility, right? And I think our previous grant recipients have, by and large, demonstrated a responsibility of, I think if they want the funds, they'll find ways of receiving the funds, right? So, and, I recognize too that when it comes to partial funding, maybe that means partial activity, right? So instead of 4, maybe that means 2. Like that's just the reality of these kinds of things. So I've heard weigh in from Doug and Mark, Fiona, though, and Emily. I wanted to give you guys another chance for your reflections.
I'm fine with the partial funding
Of 6 or 10?
of 6,000.
6, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I would also go with the 6,000.
Okay, all right. Thank you to those who submitted this proposal. We have discussed $6,000 going towards the Unity Exchange. All I could think of was Diversity Market, and I wanted to use their new language. All right, let's turn over then to the request from Restorative Community Works. And it should be just the very next one in your packets, actually. Sorry, no, skip one. Is there anyone who would like to provide a brief overview of this project from your notes? Okay, I can continue. And apologies, I didn't write this one in advance, so all errors are my own personal ones. Please correct me and jump in. But this project is proposing a public storytelling initiative that centers the lived experiences of justice-involved adults in Iowa City, those who are 18 or older who have been formerly incarcerated, system impacted, or currently impacted by the judicial system, encouraging them to share their stories of restoration, healing, and reintegration. Part of this project, I believe, includes a storytelling preparation workshop and facilitation of that, and as well as then, oh, I wish I had more detailed notes. This is where you all might have to jump in, but I think there's also then a free public forum that would then feature the participant stories that had been developed, where community members, students, and local stakeholders would also be invited to attend and engage. And there would be digital access for all of these recorded stories, and those would be housed on a website, and they would be available beyond the event and beyond this year. I'll just start by saying that I was impressed actually with this project, and in this past year, through a work project I've been a part of, been really, it's been impressed upon me, and I've been impacted by how people, through the creation of their own stories, have been able to actually even then navigate the next part of their life from here. So in channeling what's my story to date, it's an effective method, and then even also seeing and what could be my path from here, and recognizing the opportunity. That's not necessarily recognized in this proposal, but it's one thing that I think it really impressed me with the storytelling workshop. And I did have some questions about specifics within the budget. So while I liked the proposal, I've got some questions. I'll hold those for now, but I will open up conversation overall. And again, this project did request $20,000, and we have a breakdown of that.
Because I think it's a lot like Inside Out, which means a lot to me, but I'm so grateful for the opportunity to imagine that people would be able to be trained to tell their story with an idea that in telling their story, they lay some groundwork for their future. And by the way, these conversations we're having now are so instructive as we go forward. And so I'd commend the commission to find ways to communicate with each other prior to the night that we'd give the grants. Because this has really been good discussion.
Thanks, Mark.
I do stand as a testament for the powerful, outcomes of storytelling. I've been on that end where I have to tell my story and the story of my people all the time. And we have shifted the narrative. We have claimed the narrative And, so this is very powerful. If we provide the space and the time and the tools, we are capable of changing what's going on right now. So I love this project, especially, for the young teens who still, has lost few years of their lives, for whatever unfortunate, conditions that they went through. So it is, I'm very grateful for the people who behind this work and who still cares about, caring for each individual who've been suffering or being in the wrong time at the wrong place and giving them a chance to recover, to heal, and to lead other people to their path of success after what they went through. The only thing through this application is just the budget. There are a few things that seems in the very high end, and I'm not a person, I never did any work like this. I don't know if this is seems, eligible under this grant or not, but I had question marks above, a few of them.
I did as well, Viana. Emily, yeah, please.
Yeah, I like the idea behind it. I also like the practical functionality of it. I like how they have an event for it, but also that it sounds like it's going to be available after the event. I really like that double aspect of it. Also had some questions about the applicability of our grant to some parts of their budget. But yeah, that's what I really liked about this one.
Yeah, I had some notes in my review. I don't know if anyone else is. I'll just say them now, that I did see that first two things. One, if this is going to be a significantly invested in project of $20,000 for 4 events, it would be really great to have seen in the proposal how impact with the target audiences would be defined or created. So what's the anticipated goal and outcome? There's some of that in there, but I think understanding how that impact will happen could have been brought to the forefront a bit. And I hope if this project does happen, that I'm sure that's already in thinking. And so I think just being clear, building coalitions, really making sure that the stories are captured, but also that those that hear them are placed in positions of power and influence, and might also be a space to shift that power and influence across our community. On the budget, and Emily, to your point, there were a couple of things where I was wondering if there might be other resources who would donate their equipment, specifically on the audiovisual recording equipment. Maybe that could be a cost savings. I think the other things seemed like the storytelling workshop supplies, when everything else was already accounted for, like food and the facilitation materials. I wasn't quite sure what that would include. That seemed a bit high when everything else had been accounted for, but that might just be it, that I don't know the details. So given that, and I'm not comfortable using racial equity and social justice funds on contingencies, just since we are a limited funding mechanism, I would recommend partial funding of this, but I haven't, I would entertain if others have thoughts on that, about an amount, a dollar figure.
I think a lot of times when we talk about human rights, our thoughts immediately go to communities based on religion, ethnicity, race, gender, identity, sexual orientation, those sorts of things. I think one group of people who a lot of times find their human rights diminished or taken away are prisoners. And I think we're seeing that now, right? We're seeing due process, a constitutionally guaranteed right, and a universal, human right being stripped away from people simply because they've been accused of committing a crime. And so I think it's very important that we uplift that and that we facilitate those stories getting out. Others have talked about how this would be, a healing or restorative experience for the individuals who participate. but I also think there's a
I'm
potential
working
for a
on something else.
great impact on the community from hearing these stories and the humanization of criminals, people who have spent time in prison, and who are now trying to reintegrate into society. So I think this is a fantastic project. I think it is something that can be repeated and be a model for others. So I support it. I have the same concerns about budget, not a lot of specifics. It seems to be a little on the high end for certain things. I would suggest, kind of based and similar thoughts, Kelsey, from the specifics that you put out there. I would say somewhere between 12 and 15,000 here.
Thanks, Doug.
And if it moves discussion forward, I'll go ahead and say 15.
I did a quick tally of the things that I would highlight, including participant stipends, the facilitation materials, marketing and outreach, website hosting, refreshments, accessibility services, transportation support. And that comes to about $11,300. And so given that part of my initiative in suggesting partial funding is where there could be cost savings, but also where things like, for example, the contingency fee, I would not want to include that. The venue rental, I wonder if there might be opportunity to work with community groups. Maybe it would be a forcing mechanism to ask, for example, Dream City, might we use your space? And maybe even collaborate or get your thoughts on this project. And then the storytelling workshop supplies, I think those were the biggest areas where I had some not issues, but just like questions. So Doug, I know you gave us a range. I might actually be in favor of the lower end of that range personally, more towards 12,000, but open for any conversation there too.
12,000 works for me.
Okay.
And the reason that I'm supportive of the low range, and because I see what's coming, that we're running out of money. But maybe we're going to go back and review again to redistribute.
We have two that we've starred, just the two, Open Heartland and GPAS. And from here, we still have 3 more grants to discuss after this one.
Yeah, so I'm good with the 12 or 12.5. Is that what you said?
I personally said 12, but
Let's go with 12.
I'm fine with it too.
okay, thanks, Emily.
Me as well.
All right. Okay, thanks, everybody. We have recommended, go back. We have recommended $12,000 for the project from the Restorative Community Works. All right. Good conversation so far. Next, we're going to move to a proposal from the Community Inclusion Club for $20,000. I will meet you there in our packets.
I want to go back to then, we're looking at the Community Inclusion Club. My numbers clearly show you that I didn't understand this group. And I won't amend my numbers because that means I'd have to go back and look at details. But I'm really very supportive of the Community Inclusion Club and the vision for empowering these folks.
Thanks, Mark. Did you want to provide an overview of the project while I'm still making my way there?
What Braverman's provided in his proposal is to empower a delegation of people with IDDD from our community by assisting them in developing the knowledge base and skill set to voice their concerns at the state and national level. Using their collective voices, they'll be able to circumvent current attempts to remove the protections and supports they so desperately need. There's more data in the paragraph above that. It's again like what we were talking about with people fulfilling their sentence in jail and coming out and being respected, and likewise for folks that have these labels that just being able to support them.
Yeah, and you know what, before we continue, I actually want to make a correction of something I said and something that's in our spreadsheet as well. The request here is not for 20,000, it's for $1,185.
Yeah, it's very minimal.
Those ones got switched in. I'm sorry about that mistake.
There you go.
Okay.
And this is the one where I couldn't see where they requested an amount, but it has to then be in the total from their budget.
Sorry, say that again?
So what's the amount of funding being requested for this project? They didn't complete that, but they did give us a budget. That's where
Yeah.
we got the number.
Okay.
So because it's a minimal number, I recommend we fully support it.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Others?
Agreed.
Absolutely agreed.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks, Emily. Liana?
I just wrote a note that I wasn't clear, about exactly what they're going to be doing. Like, I read it, but there's like, yes, they want to do training sessions, advocate for them, but there's not like a clear, framework of exactly what they're going to be doing.
My understanding, so they're going to create a conversation, and my understanding is that they're actually going to bring in members of the IDDD population in order to inform that conversation. So there's parts of this that aren't shared yet because they're going to develop it together. They're going to co-create it. But that conversation and community building to foster advocacy, that would be one result, would be to foster advocacy. And then I see too that the primary audience, by memory and my notes here, is that it would be not just individuals and caregivers in the community, but it could also then be expanded into general community audiences. And I think, as others have said, where there's maybe little representation of those from the disability community or otherwise impaired community, I think it would be great to support this. My only note was since the bulk of the very small budget is related to t-shirts, and this is a new organization, I would just encourage them to remove details about the event from the t-shirt. Put the logo on it, but remove the event so that if you have extras, you can use them in the future. They're not kind of ephemeral one-time use things. They might be able to be worn in the future at volunteer activities, other things where you might want people identified as part of your group. But otherwise, I would support fully funding it completely.
Me too, I agree.
Okay, all right, I think we're all agreed. I'll go ahead and add that
Oh, yeah, I
into
did already.
our
Yeah, yeah.
budget.
I was behind.
So just an update, we have 2 more grants to review, and we also agreed to go back to 2 others if time and money allowed. And our total tally of discussed amounts so far is $90,685. So we have just under $10,000 remaining in our allocated funds that we can distribute. The next grant request comes from the BIPOC Healing Collective. What was the name of the individual who submitted this one again? Remember?
That's Kim Long.
Oh, it was, okay. Thank you. Okay, so hopefully they gave everyone a chance to get to that part of our packets. I'll provide a brief overview, again, all mistakes my own, but my brief overview is that the BIPOC Healing Collective intends to provide unique mental health needs of the BIPOC and minoritized individuals and those communities through a combination of direct services, educational outreach, and advocacy. The project budget details 16 therapy sessions to 40 clients, totaling $80,000, and they have requested $20,000 from the Racial Equity and Social Justice grant. My presumption would be that $20,000 would cover 16 therapy sessions to 10 clients. I just quartered the 40 clients that had been mentioned. And I will pause there and open up for conversation.
You did better with the numbers than I did. The numbers totally confused me. So I want to speak in supportive of this because it addresses something that we have such a difficult time to deal with, and that's how systems damage people, particularly the BIPOC population. Well, maybe that's enough said. I'm referring to systemic racism and the like. And that it makes sense to me that people would need to be able to have conversation with somebody about this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree, Mark. My only concern here is the limited access that
Yes.
this is. It's from what we've received, right? My impression is that this is one service provider speaking to at maximum 16 clients or 10 or whatever it is that's possible within funds allocated. And that direct, like individual support and direct counseling support is totally invaluable. There's no question to it. But the question that I ask myself is, what is the best use of racial equity and social justice allocated funds that come from the public and that we're responsible for here in Iowa City?
Thank you.
So for me, that was my biggest hesitation with this. It's hard. It's hard to really love a concept, but then be hesitant about the best use of funds when I'm thinking about public funds, especially. But I commend the application, and yeah, we'll just continue going around the docket too to hear others' thoughts.
I agree. I agree that this is a mission that definitely needs support. But again, they mentioned support groups in their application. I thought that would have been a greater outreach, but it's not listed in the budget. So I assume it's not what that's directed towards. I also am a little confused. The budget describes these are therapy sessions, but is this funding is this funding a salary?
Yes.
Are we allowed to do that?
I, whether we're allowed or not, I would say I'm not comfortable with
Yeah,
it.
we can't.
Agreed. Commendable concept. I think, it is a need. Unfortunately, I don't think this grant is the way to fund it. And it just, there are a lot of details missing. Who gets selected to be in these sessions? Would a group setting be better because it could reach more people? There are a lot of questions, a lot of concerns, but yeah, for me, I agree with Kelsey and Emily. It boils down to what's the best use of these grant funds. And I just, although the idea is commendable and the need is there, I can't support this one.
Yep.
That's where we're at.
Okay. Fiona, did you have a chance to weigh in?
The project is amazing. It breaks my heart that this should be a free service for everyone who needs it. And, living in America, I think, every single human being should be, even the healthcare system should be, having accessible treatments, especially for those at high risk. And it's hard because if you want to follow, the criteria that we follow in the Human Rights Commission grant, we cannot sponsor or use the money for the endowments or the payments to facilitate or to pay the fees for such services.
Yeah.
I wish that they had other things in the application that we can support,
Yeah.
but maybe next time.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I think what I would propose is not recommending any funding for this grant request, but we have other powers on this commission, right? Powers of network building and connection and bringing people together. And so for the applicant here, Kim Long, I would love to connect her or them with Janvi, and I would love to connect them with other people who are focused on mental health services that might be provided at minimal to no cost to diverse communities across our community. And also just encouraging, there's some really great trauma-informed activities that we've discussed today and tonight. And so I think even Dream Cities efforts come to mind. I think even work across and working with the Community Foundation, I wonder if there's other spaces that we can connect so that this work and this individual who is proposing this, their ideas can continue, even though we're not recommending a funding of this proposal. Okay, so I can offer to reach out to them separately from this, and I've put a consensus that we will not fund this. Okay.
So I'll speak directly to Home for My Peeps.
Okay, great. I'm gonna need a second to turn all my pages. So, but if you want to start, Mark, that'd be great.
So I scored this relatively high. I mean, higher than most anybody else in our group. And I did that because it was a dreamer. And I thought, what an amazing dream. And the budget, it's all about, I think it's, no, I'm not looking at it. It's not in front of me, but I don't know that we can support that kind of budget, what's needed. Why, well, I'm yammering because my score was so out of character with the rest of you, and that's where I was coming from, that I had this dreamer. So if we don't fund it, I understand. Yeah? Do you remember it now?
Oh, I remember it. Because it is unique. I in a really beautiful way, as you described, Mark. So again, just for everyone's as a brief overview of the project, as we've done with others, the idea is to establish a sustainable community on 50 acres of land, which would integrate housing, regenerative agriculture, and renewable energy systems to address housing insecurity, food sovereignty, and environmental sustainability. The project costs specifically include, they've requested $20,000. 7,000 of which they've requested for development and facilitation of educational workshops and public forums on human rights, sustainable living, and food sovereignty. $5,000 of which they've requested for community engagement initiatives, including organizing and mobilizing residents for training programs. $5,000 for initial infrastructure for community gathering spaces to host educational events and skill building programs, and $3,000 for educational materials, digital outreach, and promotional efforts to broaden public awareness. Ultimately, I think they're trying to lay the foundation for that sustainable community. That would be an eventual deliverable on this that they mentioned. That would include 10 or more disaster-resistant, energy-efficient dome structures with 30 acres of food production and a renewable energy and water system. So I'll just offer, as I'm currently speaking, some of my thoughts on this one. I really, housing is the most significant and impactful component for addressing the root and systemic issues that impede racial equity and social justice. I appreciated, we don't often receive a housing specific request on this commission in our review of grants. And so I really actually appreciated the effort to think about housing. That said, it had more of a focus on sustainability rather than social equity and social justice
right.
in its concept. And I really would want this project to have more of that element evident or described to us in order to demonstrate a use of racial equity and social justice intended funds. That, in addition to that, I really also commended the big thinking in my notes. And to ensure the best use of public resources, I would have liked to see one or two things. One, if pursuing the build eventually, more establishment of the concept with community building, as in what other fundraising will be conducted, right? So if that's the deliverable, if that's the desired outcome, share more about how you're going to get there. Or two, if you're prioritizing community education, what are the desired impacts of the community building and education beyond developing the sustainable agricultural center, if that makes sense. So like what are we trying to achieve here in having the conversations beyond developing something? And how will that work directly with other efforts? So because the current application was slim on the second part of my question, particularly, I was left with more hesitations, and that is reflected then in my score. But I would open up for further conversation too. Love to hear from others.
I'll jump in mainly because I agree pretty much with everything Kelsey just said. It's too many questions here. I admire, again, I commend the vision. I think that the idea and the vision is valuable and has merit, but the application itself is just, it's lacking too many details. There are too many questions. I don't think it would be good stewardship of our funds
That's right.
with the way this is laid out and presented to us as is.
Thanks, Doug. Emily?
So I kind of was able, at least in my brain, to connect the sustainable food growth a little bit more with the racial equity grant with low income people and people of color being unable to afford like more fresh produce, better produce, and so allowing more access to healthier and better foods. I do agree though that this leaves a lot of questions, and so I would be comfortable with other recommendations and the feelings of the other commissioners on this.
Okay, thanks, Emily. Fiona?
The first question came to my mind, do they have the 50 acres of land already? Like, like if they have it, maybe you can, suggest maybe different projects to go on that land. This is, as Mark said, it's a dreamer applicant, and I wish that comes true. But I think there's so many questions, and it needs way bigger budget to fulfill their asks as well.
Yeah. I think this is the kind of thing too, where send us an application next year too, and draw more, build the community now, start out, doing outreach to some of the groups that should be a part of this. There's a really great, and Emily, to your points too, about really great actors in our community that are thinking about food insecurity, that are working to address it. How might this project align with their educational and advocacy efforts? How might something in more coalition building be possible? And then come back to us with a request about how a racial equity and social justice focused grant might serve that, and ask us questions as you are building that too, so that we can share more why this doesn't quite meet the metric of helping us see the use of racial equity and social justice grant funds. So I hope that they listen and can take that on board, but I think I'm hearing from all commissioners a recommendation for no funding of this project.
That's correct.
Correct? Okay. Okay, all right, we are agreed on that. So taking stock, we agreed to go back to, we've reviewed all grant requests. We have agreed to go back to two of them. That is Open Heartland and the Great Plains Action Society's requests, which we partially funded, in, anticipating that there would be many requests following them. We have currently allocated just over $90,000. So we have about 9,300 remaining, thereabouts, and $15, if you're counting. Any preference of which one we go back to first? Maybe the one that we rated higher, Open Heartland?
That'd be my suggestion. Yeah. Do we have, I don't have the document in front of me. Do you have the document there that says who has Open Heartland received funding from the Racial Equity Social Justice Grant in the past, in the recent past?
Yeah, they're
Yeah, they have.
they're under one now. That
Oh,
ends
they are
June
now,
30th.
okay.
Yep.
So this was, and based on
That's
that, so they received it in 2021, 2022, and 2024. And that was my personal biggest hesitation in funding a significant amount this year.
And both of these organizations that we're revisiting have been
Correct.
repeated recipients. So, okay.
I remember wanting to revisit this one because we rated it so highly, and then we didn't. I mean, looking now at the numbers, we didn't give it for being rated so highly. It got quite a low amount of funding, but also there was some. I know we were hesitant about the ID and the cloth shopping bags, but I thought there was some important, pertinent information with driving safety and health records and translation buttons.
Yeah. Emily, I have a note that you suggested that we add funding to cover exactly those items. So the driving safety pamphlet would be an additional 400, health record form copies with local health resources. I'm personally not clear what that is, but that's $1,000. And then you just mentioned the translation button for Open Heartland website of $1,400. So that would be about $2,444 in addition to the $4,000 we've already allocated.
Yes, I think I read, maybe I'm incorrect. I thought I read that they were talking about taking people and having forms notarized, something along those lines. I'll try to find it.
Oh, yes. Okay, thank you. Thanks. And that clarifies that question I had. Thank you.
So that would take it to what amount?
Including the items that Emily just proposed, $6,400.
Okay. I'll show my particularity, and even though I know the Community Inclusion Club only wanted $1,185, if we give them another $315, it'll be $1,500, and we'll have a balance of $90,000. It would make the numbers easier to work with. Macht's nix. It means nothing. Auf Deutsch. What about Great Plains Action Society? Hey, we're not done talking about Open Heartland?
Yeah. Why not, since there's an active proposal for additional funds, I know we'll need to kind of maybe discuss them in tandem, but, and simultaneously, but maybe let me see if others have thoughts on Emily's current proposal of 6,400, increasing by 2,400 from the currently approved amount.
I agree with it.
Yes.
I agree as well.
Yeah, I'm okay with it too.
All right, that's consensus. So I have made that change. To your point, Mark, we have just under $7,000 to still allocate. So the other one that we agreed to go back to was GPS. As we begin that conversation, I will note that there were several other organizations that we only partially funded. So should we decide that we want to increase any of those spaces, we can absolutely do that. And we can advocate for that in our conversation. But I would suggest, as we've been almost 3 hours, we should probably refrain from too much expanded conversation from decisions already made. But going back to Great Plains Action Service. I apologize, it's taking me longer to get there, so if anyone else wants to reconnect us back into where we left off on the conversation, please do.
As I'm looking through the others, I think we had pretty valid reasoning behind the partial funding on a lot of on most of these. So I guess at this point I'll throw it out there. I'm not, not 100% committed to it here, but just for purposes of discussion, allocating the remainder of our funding to Great Plains Action Society for their Truths Giving.
Okay, thank you, Doug. And I think that's a great place to open up conversation about the remaining funds available to allocate.
It's 5,915, is that right? Yeah. Or 6,915, sorry.
Are you looking for their budget?
No, I was looking for one of the other ones, but thank you. I just want to recognize, I've heard myself reference Dream City, I think 3 or 4 times in this conversation. And I was impressed by their activity. And I know it was actually at my suggestion that we moved our recommended amount from 9,000 to 7,500. And so, and I recognize that that was also to try to avoid staff costs and things like that. But I do think that given the project's full amount is 15,000, I think actually increasing that to 9,000 is still, reasonable, and I'm sure that they'll be able to use those funds in an appropriate way, avoiding costs that aren't approved by the city, and having consultation on that. So I would recommend, with some of the funds that we have remaining, using an additional 1,500 towards Dream City's project and proposal.
I like that.
I do too. That one skipped as I was looking through that list. Yeah, that one. I agree. I agree completely with that.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Doug and Mark. Emily and Viana, what do you think about that proposal?
So again, you're just given the Dream City. You're talking about the Dream City, okay?
Yep, exactly.
From 7,500 to
9,000.
yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Emily?
That's fine with me as well.
Okay, great. Thanks, everybody, for entertaining that. And then, Doug, then your standing proposal of the remaining funds being allocated towards the truth-giving activities, which is more than one, means that there's just over $5,000 remaining and available for that request. Does your recommendation still stand with that in mind?
Well, is it possible to consider the Right House of Fashion, the $1,000 for the field trips?
Walk us through that. I might need a reminder. I'm sorry.
I think we're not in the Right House of Fashion. We said, about the trauma and healing and those things, for the students, the 10 students who are participating. I think that's the way that they heal and they connect and then they uplift each other. And it just, I know that we have to stick our ground to have, connection exactly to the outcome, like measurable things. And the measurable things, I can see it and I feel it. And I've been with youth who really got impacted by those events when they socialize and they just be themselves, And after working so hard together for a whole year and being able to just enjoy themselves and being out there, I think that's going to be, very measurable for others to see and to uplift each other. So I think if we can give them the $1,000.
Yeah, I think our only concern with that one was the bulk of the cost in the overall budget being related to the staff time for the instructor. And so I don't think there was any issue with the funding towards the field trip or the celebration. It was that the bulk of what we received and what we can see, that was where then we moved towards partial funding on that one. But that's still up for discussion, I think, if we wanted to re-navigate that.
I remember that conversation. I need to go back and look at it, but that we were just short of funding the full field trip, and that we had funded part of it, as well as another list on that. And then also for the Great Plains, I do suggest not disagreeing with the remainder of whatever we decide to allocate, but that we at minimum go to 11,000 just to fully support the Englert cost. But I would support that,
Definitely.
and I would support the recommendation for the Right House to fulfill that field trip.
Yeah, okay, Emily, I liked your proposal also because I'm feeling uncomfortable about setting up a conversation where we're essentially want to give additional funds to GPAS and we're talking ourselves out of how much that will be by reviewing others. And so I think agreeing to the full amount that we do want to allocate towards GPAS should be first priority. And so I would even make a proposal of 12,500 at least, and to agree to that at minimum for them and for the effort. And then if we still have remaining funds, we can allocate the remainder. But I'm feeling a dissatisfaction with the pulling from the funds available for them.
I only mentioned the Right House of Fashion because I have, I mentioned this before when we were discussing, while we were going down the list. So.
Yeah, and maybe it's my confusion, but I think we have fully funded their field trips in the partial allocation that we've provided already. Maybe that's just my own interpretation.
No, that was my understanding as well, Kelsey. Yeah.
Okay, then that's fine with me. If you just want to dedicate the rest of the amount for the Great Plain Action Society, that's fine. If that's what you're leaning toward.
Well, I'm proposing a slightly different strategy, which is at the very least that right now, we, the five of us, agree to at least 12,500 for GPAS, and then still entertain the conversation about Right House of Fashion. If we do want to have that, it's just for ethical reasons, I don't think having the simultaneous conversations is helping us right now, unfortunately. So is everyone okay with the 12,500 amount for GPAS and increasing that to that level
Yeah.
at least?
Yeah, I had,
Agreed.
Someone-
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
I had to learn to speak alphabet.
Well, and I was.
I got it,
Go ahead.
I got it, I'm on it.
It's partly because I made a mistake throughout this meeting and I didn't use the society aspect of their name.
We're on it.
So I apologize for that. All right, Viana, would you like to then lead us through your thinking on the Wright House of Fashion proposal? We have just under $3,000 remaining in our allocated budget available.
But as you have explained, I might have misunderstood you first when you were saying how we allocated the money toward not the field trip, no, the field trips with the. What does it say?
The instructor lead portion of the
So
cost,
this
yeah.
is the one that we took off.
We only partially funded considering that was a large amount of staff time that was included in that budget. And so in our discussion, we agreed to like fully for the amount of the ending celebration, fully for the amount of the field trip. But because that's such a heavy fee and we weren't sure if all of that would be qualifying.
So sorry, I misunderstood you at the
No,
beginning. That's why I
no
thought that you did the
problem.
opposite, and I was wondering why.
Sorry for any
No, that's
miscommunication
okay.
on my part. Yeah,
No, no.
sorry.
Yeah, so that's fine. Yes, so we have to maybe look for, to dedicate the rest of the money for another organization then, to avoid, dedicating this money for something that's not even eligible.
Yes, I welcome I welcome proposals at this point in time. I think we have thoroughly deliberated. I'm really proud of everyone. 3 hours in, we're right at the finish line. Just a few more $1,000s available. I think they're all really worthy causes. So I do welcome proposals here, including going back to GPAS. So the original idea of just the remainder of funds available to truth giving efforts, I think still stands as well. Should we just allocate the remainder to GPAS then?
Yeah, we had pretty articulate reasons for why we funded other things the way we did.
Yes.
I just really appreciated Emily's observation that, number one in our scoring, we wanted to make sure we were funding it. And it's sort of like listening to each other. What did we say? Oh, yeah, so that's what we're going to do, what we said. The city council would really be surprised if we didn't recommend spending it all.
Oh, no, that would
Right.
not be,
No.
if anything, last year we actually asked for more, and we received, I think, fewer applications this year. So,
All right, so we have $2,915.
correct.
I would be okay with allocating the rest to the Great Plains Action Society. I think it goes along with what I said earlier. We rated it highly.
Yeah,
There was no concrete reason to why we didn't advocate more funds to them other than we wanted to make sure we were able to allocate to the rest of them that we wanted to. So I would say we just go ahead and do it.
Great. I agree, Emily.
on it.
Yep.
I
Agreed.
will also remind us that there was, I think, at one point in time, maybe a suggestion for 15,000 for GPAS when we were discussing it actively. And if we allocate the remainder, it's just over 15,000. It's 15,415. I heard agreement from all but
Yes.
Fiona so far. Okay.
Agreed.
Okay, well, that's yes.
Okay. I am putting it in the document. Stephanie, could I ask a reminder? Do we need to have a motion and approval of our recommendations for the grant request? Yes. Okay. I would entertain a.
Simple one, though, just,
So move,
I would
we,
entertain a motion.
I so move we fund the grant applications as we've diligently provided, recommended.
Second.
Great, thanks, Mark. Thanks, Emily. All those in favor say aye.
I
I
Any opposed? This would be a bad time to say it. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. That concludes just our item number 6 in our agenda. Item number 7, our next regular meeting is. Actually, I apologize. I have a question before we move to item number 7. When will the recommendation be made to City Council, Stephanie?
Probably the first meeting in June,
Okay.
which, let's see, would be June 3rd. So we would need commissioners present to present it to the city council.
Okay. I will personally be out of town on that date, but I'm sure we can.
I am also out of town at World Pride in DC that week.
I missed that date. It was June.
Third.
I will be in town.
Yeah. And if it makes a difference, we could bump it to the
17th?
correct.
Is that the next one? Yeah. I
Or
do
it's
that.
possible that you can join by Zoom. I think, I would have to ask the city clerk, but it might be possible that you can present by Zoom too. I just would have to ask.
Okay.
But in any event, I would know more information by your next meeting dates.
Okay. So we can be sure to confirm attendance when we meet in a couple of weeks. But, and the date for that. Okay. Thank you for that clarifying answer. Item number 7 then, our next regular meeting is May 27th. So we'll see each other again in not too long. And then unless there's any questions, I would actually entertain a motion for an adjournment.
So moved.
Moved.
Ooh, tie.
I'll second that.
I'll leave it up to Stephanie of who got that one. All right, we are adjourned. Thank you so much, everybody.